In the 8th century BC, the northern kingdom of Israel occupied a harsh, unforgiving physical landscape. This geographical reality highlights a historical paradox. A nation founded on the radical monotheism of the Exodus routinely reverted to worshiping the localized deities of their neighbors. The primary rival for Israelite devotion was the Canaanite storm god, Baal-Hadad. His iconography features a mace in one hand and a thunderbolt in the other, direct symbols of atmospheric power. Adopting these localized gods was a calculated agrarian strategy, specifically designed to secure the rain required for survival. The biblical authors met this threat by launching a subversive literary polemic. They wrote specifically to dismantle the logic of syncretism from the inside out. Framing ancient idolatry as a socio-economic supply chain issue clarifies exactly what the Old Testament prophets were fighting against. Ancient Israelites lived with extreme agrarian vulnerability. Without predictable seasonal rain, the entire economy collapsed. Their survival depended entirely on water falling from the sky. This chart illustrates the Canaanite myth mirroring reality. The outer ring displays agricultural seasons, spring rains, harvest, and winter. The inner ring maps Baal's narrative. His story of battling chaos, dying, and resurrecting locks perfectly into these physical seasons. For an Israelite farmer watching a dry sky, this system offered a perceived guarantee and a mechanism of explanation for the unpredictable forces of nature. The prophet Hosea documents the failure of this logic in chapter 2 of his text. The Israelites took their actual socioeconomic yields, like their grain, their sweet wine, and their oil, and credited them to the Canaanite system. Syncretism operated as an economic hedge. The population traded exclusive theological loyalty for perceived agricultural security. The psalmists and prophets deployed a specific literary tactic to break this loyalty. They hijacked the exact imagery of their cultural rival to assert Yahweh's cosmic supremacy. In the Canaanite text discovered at Ugarit, Baal's primary title is the Rider of the Clouds. This diagram shows a direct literary theft. On the left, the Ugaritic epic. On the right, Psalms 68 and 29. The Israelite poets lift the exact phrases, Rider of the Clouds and Voice of the Lord, and apply them exclusively to Yahweh. The poetic cadence itself is a copy. In Psalm 29, the phrase Voice of the Lord, representing thunder, repeats exactly 7 times, mirroring the exact structure of Canaanite poetry. The geographic path of the storm in Psalm 29 tracks from the Mediterranean Sea down across northern Israel. The text actively marches Yahweh's storm directly through Baal's home turf. The biblical authors do not endorse pagan mythology here. By weaponizing familiar cultural tropes, they prove that Yahweh alone controls the forces of nature. The polemic targets the secondary figures of Canaanite myth as well. According to the texts, Baal gains his throne by defeating Yam, the chaotic sea god, and Lotan, a 7-headed dragon. The ancient mind viewed the churning ocean as a physical manifestation of primordial chaos. Controlling it required absolute subjugation of these elements by a higher, unseen authority. Psalm 74 issues a direct counterclaim. It states explicitly that Yahweh, not Baal, crushed the heads of the sea monsters and Leviathan. Psalm 104 delivers the ultimate mockery. It reduces Leviathan from a terrifying chaos monster to a mere aquatic pet that Yahweh created just to play with. This cosmic supremacy translates directly to physical geography. Canaanite theology placed Baal's dwelling on Mount Zaphon. Psalm 48 usurps this by declaring Mount Zion, a relatively modest hill in Jerusalem, to be the true height of Zaphon. By systematically dismantling the mythology, the biblical text strips Baal of his historical victories, leaving him a powerless imitation in the mind of the Israelite reader. These textual battles played out in physical spaces. At the state-sponsored sanctuary of Dan in the Northern Kingdom, the religious reality was deeply fractured. The majority of Israelites blended the worship of Yahweh with fertility rites and golden calves. Looking at this behavior, the prophet Hosea outlines the psychological consequence of idolatry. It operates as a law of assimilation. In Hosea chapter 4, he applies this logic directly. Because Israel worshipped a localized, stubborn calf deity, the nation itself was transformed into a stubborn heifer. The macro implications are severe. Gods whose mythologies revolve around violence, power grabs, and chaos produce worshippers who emulate those exact traits. This explains the collapse of social justice in Israel. When leaders like Ahab and Jezebel stole land and murdered their citizens, they mirrored the violent ethos of the Canaanite pantheon. By imitating the violent character of these gods, Israel's leaders abandoned the laws of the Exodus for a culture of state-sponsored exploitation. The prophet Jeremiah defined the futility of this strategy. He described the people turning away from the source of living waters to dig their own broken cisterns that could hold nothing. Yahweh executes a severe counter-strategy in the book of Hosea. He deliberately strips away the grain, the wine, and the seasonal rain to physically shatter the false economic feedback loop of Baal worship. This deprivation operates as a necessary systemic reset. It forces Israel to confront the actual mechanism of their survival. Once the loop is broken, the climactic restoration arrives in Hosea chapter 14, where Yahweh definitively reclaims all agrarian imagery for himself. He declares that he is the true dew to Israel, that they will blossom like the lily, and that he is the evergreen cypress yielding their fruit. The polemic against Baal sought to prove that the grain, wine, and oil were not the products